A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. Our case this week, it was a sadistic plot, not a game or sexual fantasy. The mastermind behind a plot to sexually assault a devout Catholic in order to break her of her faith was a trusted man, a firefighter. He enlisted the help of an attacker who said he thought he was taking part in a role of play fantasy. The man had no idea that the woman had not consented. He thought that her fighting back was part of this role playing. What they put this woman through is frightening and it is evil. We are recording this on Monday, June 22nd of 2026. Our guest today is John Day, a criminal defense attorney and a former sex crimes prosecutor. John is also a commentator that you can catch on multiple media outlets. John is new to the program. Welcome, John.
Oh, Anna, thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great. And I think this case will be something which you can truly help us through because it's an unusual sexual assault case in the sense that the perpetrator who's been convicted here is not the one who assaulted her, but the one who plotted this insane thing.
Yeah, he was the mastermind, according to law enforcement. And to unpack this, you have to just wrap your head around these disturbing facts, the motivation, which was somehow apparently to break this woman's religious faith. And I mean, to try to understand the motivation means you've got to delve into the depths of the most evil and darkest places of the human psyche. So it's really not a place I want to go, but you have to at least address the fact that this happened. And here's a person who intended a horrific outcome by using a third person and trying to literally, as he said, break the faith of his victim. Just horrifying.
It really is. That firefighter is going to pay heavily for his monstrous actions. He has been sentenced to life in prison for planning that violent home invasion and sexual assault. This happened in Fort Worth, Texas, in a suburb. Joel Jones, who is 54 years old, has been sentenced to life in prison after engineering this insane home invasion and sexual assault on a friend and neighbor of his. The victim in this case has not been named by authorities. Joel Jones used a dating website to enlist the help of a man who fantasized about sexually assaulting women. He said that he thought he was taking part in a consensual fantasy at the woman's house. We will never really know the truth other than the fact it seems that the authorities in all of this, John, did believe him. We'll get to how he got a much lighter sentence and virtually no prison time.
Yeah, you know, the prosecutors had to lock their case down. And if they had to use this guy as whether he was unwitting or witting to what was going on, they needed a hook to go after the real perpetrator here. So if he got a break, I can understand that as a prosecutor. I mean, the idea that somehow this guy genuinely believed that this was some kind of a fantasy. I mean, you have to understand the victim was literally fighting back, and that was not role playing. That was not acting from what we can tell. But at the end of the day, he gets a sentence that's a break for him. Prosecutors get to use his testimony against the real the serious villain in this case, the guy who was the mastermind. So I get that. I don't have any problem with doing that. You know, when the expression in prosecution is when you've got the devil on you're trying the devil in court, you're prosecuting the devil. Sometimes you got to go to hell for the witnesses. And that's sort of what happened here. So,
wow, I've never heard that. You have to go to hell for the witnesses. I like that. May I borrow that?
You may borrow that, Anna.
Okay. Wow. That paints a very clear picture for me, especially for this case. Let's get to the background here, because what I'm having the most trouble with is obviously motivation. And this whole idea that prosecutors say he was trying to break her of her Catholic faith this is just me entirely speculating, and we'll get to it later, but he was a neighbor of hers, kind of a friend. And when she got attacked and managed to get away, and we'll get into those details, she went to him. So I think he's got this weird hero complex where he creates a scenario that is quite dangerous, and she runs to him and he helps her. And I think he got off on that because then he tried to do it again.
Well, look what he does for a living, Anna. He's a firefighter. Okay. What we look up to firefighters as heroes every day. I mean, he obviously had that as a part of his life, the idea that he was going to save people and get the appreciation of his community and be seen as a rescuer. But somewhere that got twisted in an incredibly evil way. And so he's got this whole scenario where he's one, victimizing this woman, trying to break her faith. And we can get in. I mean, that's one of the hardest things in the world to wrap your head around. But she does go to him. She goes to him because at that moment, she sees him as a rescuer, as a firefighter, someone who can save her. But it's part of his dark, evil plan. And that's one of the many parts of this that is just so hard to fathom, so hard to understand. And it's just his stomach turning.
Yeah, and I think that's why the jury in 20 minutes were like, put this man away for life. Don't let him see the day of light. And I get that because there's something so inherently evil here that it's just so sick and twisted. It's just so sick and twisted. So let's get back to the background part of this. So at the time of the attack, Joel was the deputy chief of the Everman Fire Department. However, beneath this brave hero exterior that we've been discussing, Joel possessed a darkness. He liked to act out, sexually, say police. But where he crossed the line was with this attack. So, according to the prosecutors, Joel had a wild and deviant sex life. You know what? If it's consensual, no problem there. They say that he was involved in all sorts of risque pornography, drugs, cross-dressing, sex with multiple partners. Again, if it's consensual, that's not the issue. The issue is this plot. Okay, apparently he wanted something more. Something far darker than anything he had ever done. We don't know why he targeted the victim. Again, it's why he wanted to take her faith and her safety. That's the part that I think is so horrible and mean. To enact this sick plan, Joel recruited the services of Tobasia Griffiths through this dating site called Sniffies. The site primarily caters to gay, bisexual, bicurious men seeking sexual encounters. For his participation, Tobasia was paid a shocking low sum of $100 to do this role playing, and he was paid via Zelle. How crazy is this, John?
And you get the sense from the law enforcement, from the prosecution theory that so these guys are on this site. There's an attraction. And, that's a whole, you have to look, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist, but in our line of work, we deal with human motivation and human behavior all the time. And you get some sense of it. I have never, in 30 plus years of prosecuting and defending criminal cases, I've never seen anything like this before, where the motivation is not just say some horrifying sexual assault, or there's something even beyond that, which is sexual assault plus breaking this person's faith. And to do it, you go on this website, you hire someone for apparently $100, which, is shocking in itself. And you set out this entire script, you set out this plan, and you've got this person who allegedly is unwitting, an unwitting participant. But the goal is to not only physically break this woman, but to spiritually break her. And it's just, I've never seen anything like it.
As far as the prosecution's case, the fact that this $100 was exchanged, how significant a piece of evidence is that?
Well, it shows that that the guy who was hired, Griffiths. So, he said, okay, I'll do this for what, $100. I'll participate in this, what he understands anyway, is a role play where he's supposed to break into this house, sexually assault this woman. I guess what he's told, well, she's going to pretend, she's going to fight back, she's going to kick, she's going to punch, she's going to scratch, but it's all part of our game. And so, because the prosecution entered into a deal with him, yeah, I mean, that he's getting a probated sentence. He's not doing prison time, but you have to understand that to make the case, they sometimes have to do that. So the $100 is, it's part of the scheme. I'm surprised that somebody, $100 for this guy. Who knows what else he's participated in? Who knows what else he's been involved in based off this site? But for some reason, that seemed like the appropriate amount.
Right. Yeah, the whole thing is very sick. Now, in addition to this, as part of this deal, prosecutors say that Joel instructed this role-playing attacker to record the encounter for his own sick fulfillment. That's the other thing here. He is plotting this, right? He's already been convicted. So he's plotted this thing, but now he wants to listen to this whole thing.
Yeah, it goes beyond, and there are other cases where there have been these sort of fake role-playing situations. The Brendan Banfield case out of Virginia, where the Banfield's an IRS agent, basically a law enforcement agent, and he creates this entire scenario very similar to this. But in that case, the point of it was to murder his wife. In this case, it's as twisted, but more so, because the idea that he wants to have a digital record of the assault on his friend, on his neighbor, so that he can watch it again and again. It fits into the perverted claims that he was part of this website, part of this community, where he found Griffiths to participate with him. But the idea that he's making a record of his crime, it gives you some sense of the depravity of the defendant. It gives you some sense of, it goes beyond simply the sexual assault. It goes into the actual breaking of this woman's spirit, of her spirituality. And it's just something that's so, so evil.
Yeah. And in each case, obviously the mastermind, the perpetrator is trying to take something away from the woman who is targeted. In the Brendan Banfield case, what was interesting about that, the poor man who showed up that morning, who thought that he was going to be having sex with a woman who was waiting for him, which would have been Brendan's wife, he had no idea. And he was used as an intruder. And the whole scheme was, the husband tried to, save his wife from the intruder. And then, of course, they find all the digital evidence. And I mean, the whole point was, say prosecutors, was that Brendan wanted to be with his girlfriend, the au pair. They needed to get rid of the wife. And this was the scheme that they came up with. But, in that case, the person who showed up, who had no idea that he was part of this plot, he ends up getting killed. In this case, this one, obviously is charged with a serious crime. Bringing in these innocent third parties, this is craziness.
Yeah, well, and it is. And let's look at some of the common themes here. In both those cases, yeah, there's a allegedly innocent person who's being manipulated by someone who thinks that they're a lot smarter than the person that they're manipulating. What is a common theme? All right, Banfield, IRS agent, law enforcement agent. He knows the system. In this case, Joel Jones, a fire chief, not exactly the same thing, not exactly a law enforcement officer, but someone who understands how the system works. And in both cases, these guys have jobs where they are theoretically seen as protectors of victims, and a law enforcement agent in Banfield's case, a deputy fire chief in Jones' case in Fort Worth. And so there's something that's twisted to the point where they are using their authority, they're using their knowledge of the system to manipulate these relatively innocent people, into playing a role that they think they're doing consensually. But these guys both have the sense that they are smarter than everybody else. They're master manipulators. They know the system. They know what law enforcement's going to look for. They think that they have come up with a perfect crime. But as we know in both cases, that ain't so.
Yeah. Thank goodness they're not that smart. On February 21st of 2025, Joel helped Tobasia go to the victim's home in Fort Worth, enter her bedroom, and then violently assault the victim. The victim fought back, kicking, hitting, screaming, and eventually she took a lamp and she hit her attacker with the lamp. And again, the attacker thought this was all part of the role playing, is what he tells police. Eventually, she manages to escape by telling the attacker, which, when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. She says to him, I really need to go to the bathroom. And because he thinks this is that he's not there to do something she doesn't want, well, of course you're going to let her take a bathroom break, right? And maybe she was astonished that it worked because she had no idea. And that's when she ran out of the house and she ran for help. Now, what's interesting is that the attacker in this case, he thought, oh, well, I guess she's done with the fantasy. This is over. So we're done here. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Well, okay. So the attacker gets hit with a lamp. And I mean, I guess the idea is that he still thought that this was part of the role play. But you have to wonder at some point. Now, again, this guy did this for $100. So, maybe he's easily manipulated. But if he's being hit in the face with a lamp, for example, does he still think this is part of the role play? Or is there any part of him that thinks, wait a minute, is this really what it's supposed to be? Regardless of that, he is a key witness for the prosecution. And in the end, he gets this deal, understandably. I get that. No problem with that. But then the part that, as we talked about, the fact that she, in her moment of absolute terror, reaches out to the actual mastermind, to the perpetrator, for help. It's like those horror movies where they say the phone call's coming from inside the house. I mean, just bone chilling. The idea that the guy she goes to is the one she thinks is going to save her. It's like she obviously has these feelings that this guy is safe. This guy can make things right. She doesn't call the police right away. She calls him.
Yes, she calls Joel.
And it's got to satisfy with him. It's got to satisfy some twisted, perverted, rescue.
Oh, it's probably a sexual turn on for him.
Absolutely. And the poor woman, I mean, can you imagine what went through her mind when she found out that who had really masterminded this thing with the guy she called for help. But again, for him, I'm not a psychologist, but for him, that's probably the goal he was aiming for. Besides breaking her faith, he's like, I'm going to be her savior. I'm going to be the one who protects her, even though I'm the one who caused her this incredible trauma.
He's the one who calls 911 for her. Unbelievable. She goes to the hospital for treatment. She files the police report. And even after all this happens, right? So the police have been alerted. She's been injured, obviously. Then, according to prosecutors, after this first encounter, Joel is still messaging the attacker, right? Unbelievable. And asking for the recording of the assault.
Right.
The investigation has begun in earnest, yet he's still trying to collect the stuff that he wants from this. And here's the other thing that I cannot believe. He must have gotten such a high off of this, because even though, again, the police investigation has begun, he started planning a second attack on this woman, according to authorities. This time, she was going to be kidnapped and sexually assaulted. Yeah. This is, I mean, it's the digital forensic evidence.
Well, he obviously is so arrogant that he has, he thinks he's come up with the perfect crime, but he is creating a digital paper trail, as we used to call it, a paper trail. He's creating a trail that leads directly back to him by his communications with Tobasia, the guy he hires. Now, as a deputy fire chief, someone who understands the system, in the back of your mind that this communication with him, everything you're saying is being recorded in the cloud. Every communication you have is out there, and he's got to be so arrogant and believing in his own invincibility that he thinks, oh, Tobasia is on my side. I bought him for $100. I mean, I guess in that world you get what you pay for. But he bought him for $100, and he thinks nothing can go wrong here. And I'm going to plan the second horrific attack because I got whatever he got out of the first one. He's going on this pattern. He's going down this road where, after a second one, would there be more? And this poor woman has believing that he's the one who is rescuing her. He's the one who's saving her because he's the deputy fire chief. It's just, you can only imagine when she found out. That's what I keep going back to.
Yeah.
The moment she found out who was behind this, what that feeling of betrayal and horror must have been like.
Yeah, it's another violation. Again, it's another assault. Well, Tobasia Griffiths said to police that he had no idea that he had done anything wrong and had no idea that it wasn't consensual until Joel shared with him that the police were investigating. And of course, you'd be like, well, why would police be investigating this? So clearly at this point, he's like, uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into here? Now, again, he never ended up really getting any prison time, and we will discuss when we get to the sentencing part here. But here's the other thing about this investigation and why I don't understand why, in some ways, Joel the firefighter doubled down here. The victim identified a partial license plate and car description of the attacker. So it didn't take that long for police to find a vehicle that sent him to Tobasia Griffiths, right?
Yeah.
Joel would have known this unless he's a complete idiot, which he is in many, many ways. So firefighter Joel here, not only does he double down in plotting a second attack, but this to me is the most unbelievable thing. He goes, Joel, firefighter, neighbor, good man, goes to the neighbors and starts telling them that there's been an attack in the neighborhood and to please be careful because, there's a car, there's an attacker on the loose. And this is caught on a Ring doorbell, which one of the neighbors shared with a local TV station where you see Joel and the neighbor says, and he seems like he's doing us a favor and telling my wife that she better be careful. John, what do you make of that?
And it feeds into, all right, so look, the thing with the going to the neighbors' houses and saying, hey, be careful because there's an attacker on the loose. The idea that he was the one that the victim called. And there is a thing, and I live in a part of the country where we have a lot of wildfires, and occasionally you find an arsonist firefighter, for example, someone who is in the fire department, they love their job, but part of loving their job means they love doing their job. And so occasionally you have criminal prosecutions, and I've done them as a prosecutor, where you have a firefighter who sets fires intentionally so they can be seen as the one to go and put out the fire. It's feeding into, and it's obviously not to besmirch firefighters because, they're amazing. They have an amazing job. They save they protect the public. Every once in a while, there's a bad apple. And this may be an extension of that because you have Jones here going to the neighborhood, telling people that there's a threat, telling people to be careful. And he is living up to his role as the protector of the community. At the same time, he's the one who created the danger in the first place. So it may be part of that rare situation where, for example, firefighters who set fires and then put them out to be the hero, this guy is down that same road, but it's such a twisted, sick, and evil and perverted variation on that. So
yeah,
he wants to be the hero. He wants to be the hero.
He really does. It is as sick as it gets. So when detectives finally talk to Tobasia Griffiths, he spills the beans on the whole thing from his perspective. And under interrogation, he admits, yes, there was a sexual encounter with the victim, but he told authorities that he was solicited to do this and that from his understanding, it was all consensual. It was, that's what they were going to do, have their fantasy. So as part of their investigation, police obtained warrants for computers, thumb drives, cell phones, all the digital evidence that you would expect, especially from that dating site. And that's when police realized that this really was a setup. that it was a setup. And they arrested both men in March of 2025. So they were both charged with aggravated sexual assault, but Joel got an extra charge of aggravated kidnapping and sexual abuse. I find that interesting because the extra charge of aggravated kidnapping doesn't necessarily specifically address, plotting this thing. But sometimes the charge doesn't speak as clearly to the crime. Does that make sense?
It does. And, kidnapping, it can be holding someone without consent for the purposes of, an illegal sexual activity. I mean, if your motivation, you can understand why that gets charged that way. And so what law enforcement, what prosecutors have are these two suspects, these two perpetrators. One of them apparently has a good enough story that he was an unwitting and innocent or ignorant, I guess is the better term.
Ignorant, good. Yeah.
Participant in it. And they must have believed that it would be hard to go to a jury with his case and say he needs to get convicted of these specific intent crimes when he was the one, he took $100 to participate in this. You have to wonder what the discussions were in the prosecution office about how to deal with his case. But at the end of the day, if the point was to get Joel Jones as the mastermind, as the one who came up with this, you can understand letting the other guy off with a probated sentence. He's on probation, but if he helped, if he cooperated, if he gave the prosecution information they needed, I don't have a problem with that, even though it's a horrific situation.
Yeah. So after the news broke that Joel, the deputy fire chief, has been arrested and then is placed on administrative leave from the fire department, he does ultimately resign. So now all the neighbors are hearing about this, right? And that's when the neighbor with the Ring doorbell video is like, hold on a second. This guy's been arrested. This is the same guy. I'm pretty sure I still have the video of him coming over here to warn us of the attacker, but police have arrested him as being part of the attack plan. So yeah, you can imagine how difficult this is for the neighbors, primarily for the victim here. Yeah, but you know what? He didn't break her. He's not going to break her, and he's not going to break her faith. Yeah. Oh, he was definitely the devil. But
no, and you have to. I mean, your heart goes out to this woman who obviously was a woman of faith. I mean, there was something in there that drove her, and for some reason, this guy it's like the ultimate clash between evil and good, because she believes in something, and he believes in the exact opposite, and he tries to use his manipulative skills and his knowledge of the system to break this woman. And she went through. She went through hell. She went through the trauma. But at the end of the day, he is doing life in prison, and she is, you can only hope that she's getting all the help that's out there with victims and, psychological help and just the support of the community. But she won. At the end of the day, she won.
So Tobasia was allowed to bond out, but not Joel. He was held without bond ahead of trial. Tobasia eventually pleaded guilty to aggravated sexual assault. As part of his plea deal, he cooperated in the prosecution of Joel Jones, and in May of this year, he was sentenced to 10 years probation. So while he avoided any prison time, he will live under a lot of restrictions for the next decade, and he will also likely be required to be registered as a sexual offender. So, with these deals, and I want to make sure I'm correct about this, John, that and 10 years is a long time. It basically means if you violate any of those terms of the probation, you go to prison, right?
Right. You're under a microscope for the entire probation period. If you get a speeding ticket, that's going to be okay. Right. But if you get off that line that you're supposed to walk for 10 years, these prosecutors know that they can get him step back for the entirety of his sentence. It's supposed to keep him on the straight and narrow, and it reflects his value to the prosecution and going after the real mastermind of all this evil activity.
So then came Joel's turn. And when faced with the evidence and the fact that you had someone quite key to this who was going to testify against him, Joel decides that he's going to change his plea and he agrees to plead guilty to aggravated sexual assault. This was on June 9th of this year. Now, he avoided the trial by entering his plea. This happened as jury selection was beginning. However, in order to decide the penalty that he should pay for this, the jury was impaneled for this part of it, and it would be their decision on what the sentence should be. And the range is quite huge. It's anywhere from probation all the way to a life sentence. And prosecutors wanted a life sentence in this case. And 20 minutes later, the jury said, "You got it. You will be spending the rest of your life in prison."
Yeah, 20 minutes, not enough time for the jurors to order lunch. They were angry. They wanted to see him go down.
Yeah.
And if you're the defense on this, all you're doing is rolling the dice and hoping that somebody sees some, glimmer of not evil in the defendant. This the idea that maybe the jurors would give him something lesser. And it's like going to the casino with your future, with your life. I mean, you don't know what the jurors are going to do, but you know that they're angry. They know that somebody needs to pay. And, I feel bad for the defense team because that's all that they could do is hope that somehow they would get something that wasn't, life in a prison in Texas. But at the end of the day, the jurors did not like this guy. They did not like what he did. They wanted him to pay the penalty, and he's going to pay his debt to society for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And I don't know, but sometimes I look at it this way. When trials are avoided in cases like this, I sometimes, and it depends on the family, right? And survivors and their families. But in this case, I see the victim being spared having to retell what happened to her. And that is fairly traumatic. And so, especially if she is spared and he gets the maximum sentence, that really is the most justice you could hope for.
That's exactly right, Anna. As a prosecutor, you can get tunnel vision. You can say, boy, we're going to take this guy to trial. He did something so horrific that we need a public airing. He needs his day in court, but the community needs to see that we're doing our jobs. And if you're in that tunnel vision phase, you sometimes have to take a step back, sit down with your victim and say, oh, by the way, what would this do to you if we have to go to trial? And sometimes you have victims who say, I've already been traumatized so badly that it doesn't matter. Let's take this case to trial and see what happens. Other times a victim says, I don't want to go through that again. Take a shot with the jury on the sentencing, but I'm okay if we skip the trial and we just try to get the best possible outcome. Where that happened most recently was the Brian Koberger murders in Idaho. The victims, he avoided a trial by pleading, and it's certainly controversial because there was not a public airing of his defense. There was not a public airing of the case. And, that kind of sharpens the focus on decisions prosecutors have to make in concert with victims. And sometimes you get victims' families that are very unhappy about the outcome. And other times you have victims who say, I got spared the trauma of living through that again, just as you said. And so it's a case by case thing, but you can certainly understand why in this case, maybe the woman said, I do not want to live through that again. I do not want to be on the stand under cross-examination, and let's just put this to rest.
Yeah, and we just had it very recently with Rex Heuermann, the serial killer out of Gilgo Beach, Long Island, New York, where he entered his plea. I do find it interesting as part of Rex Heuermann's plea, all the women that he killed, that he has to sit down with FBI profilers.
Right.
How can you even enforce it if he doesn't want to? I mean, these are tricky, slippery people.
They are, but if anything, from a prosecutor standpoint, if they can even glean a little bit of information about the mind of somebody who is, purely evil, and it benefits law enforcement down the road in terms of profiling and investigation, you have to think it's worth doing that because maybe we'll get something out of the mind of a serial killer that we didn't have before. Maybe it's going to add to the body of knowledge we have that's going to make investigation of this kind of crime more effective. So you can understand why they want to see what they can get from this person. Of course, are they going to be honest? Are they going to be totally compliant? I mean, who knows? But at the end of the day, if you can get even a little bit of information, it could be worth it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if he's stuck in prison and lonely and, it passes the time to talk to an FBI profiler. I just look at it like he's getting this extra attention again. And it's being validated that he is in the world of killers. He's unique and special, even if in the most horrific way. So I guess there's that part of it that I hate the idea of feeding this man, attention.
Well, we remember Jodie Foster in The Silence of the Lambs playing the FBI agent who has to get information. It's the same concept. And is there a greater good to come out of it? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the balance. That's kind of the question that only law enforcement can answer.
Well, in this case, they achieved the most justice possible under the circumstances, maximum sentence, avoided a trial in which the victim would have to sit through it. So, justice has been served. It's always empty because she will never be the same, but thank goodness she's got that strength and she has her faith. And this is about one of the most disgusting cases that we've had to talk about on this podcast in a long time.
Yeah, and it does go back to his stated purpose was to break her faith. He may have tested it, obviously, but you cannot get a more perfect example of evil versus good. Someone trying not only to physically break somebody, but to spiritually break them. And in the end, he failed. He's going to be in prison the rest of his life. And she can at least know that she stood for something. She stood her ground and she beat back this evil attempt to break the thing that was most important to her.
It is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases you all are talking about on social media. And here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good. How's it going, Anna? It feels like it's been a long time.
It has been because you got very sick. You had terrible laryngitis. We couldn't even hear you for weeks.
It was awful.
And then I took a little vacation time, and here we are again.
Back at it. John, so great to have you on the show. Really excited for you to be part of your first comment section. This is, we just like to end on something like a little bit lighter than, the previous case. So this one is a case I'm calling a speeding senior. This comes out of Leesburg, Florida, where an 85-year-old man has been arrested for street racing after he was allegedly clocked speeding at triple digits through a 45-mile-per-hour zone. So this all came about when a deputy with the Lake County Sheriff's Office saw two vehicles traveling at an abnormally high rate of speed at around 11:40 p.m. on June 12th. Nearly midnight there. So pretty late night street racing. According to authorities, the radar clocked one of the vehicles, which was a red Corvette, traveling at 125 miles per hour, and then a gray sports car traveling behind that vehicle at around 110 miles per hour, according to officers. Again, traveling at these speeds in an alleged 45 mile per hour zone. So the officer, sends the lights up and they begin pursuing the gray sports car here, sort of at the back of the pack. They pull over the driver, 85-year-old William Bosworth here. And the entire incident is captured on body cam as the officer is kind of is interviewing this man. And William has like a cigarillo in his mouth, like one of those like tiny thin cigars in his mouth throughout the entire interaction, and he's like kind of puffing on it, and it gives, I don't know, when I watched it, it just like gives this entire air of like a guy who's like 85, but he's still in his mind, like in his 20s. He's still at his peak here. So when they ask him about this speed racing thing, he denies it. He says that the other vehicle actually swerved at him, so he traveled to this high level of speed to quote unquote get away from him before we caused a problem. It was interesting that he said "we" there, but who knows? Maybe it may be a bit of a slip. And he, repeatedly denies this whole street racing scenario. He says he doesn't even know the man, and he gives my favorite line, which is he says he was simply out having a little ride in my favorite car, which that's an identifiable feeling. So if you're wondering about this other driver now, the red Corvette, authorities eventually caught up with him, and this vehicle was allegedly driven by 57-year-old Philip Signornio. And he was caught that same evening. He also denies street racing, and he claimed he didn't know William as well. So who knows if these guys are making this up, if they did know each other, if it was just a random street race at 11:40 p.m. at night. It's like there's a lot of things that I have questions about.
And both of them are old enough to know better.
Well, it's a combined age of 160. These guys racing in the street like a Springsteen song. I mean, take it to the track. Yeah, if you're gonna, God bless them for being 85 and having the motor skills to control a car that fast. On the other hand, nobody got hurt. I mean,
yes,
thank God. But there's tracks out there. Take it to the track. Compete against the other 80-year-olds.
That's right.
It's a lot safer. But at the same time, I like the idea of him having a cigar hanging out of his lips as he's being questioned.
Yeah.
So he's got an attitude which, in the appropriate place, could be really funny.
And so the guy that was driving this red Corvette here, Philip, he also says he doesn't know anything about this whole thing, but he might have sort of like gotten himself in trouble when he was in custody. According to media outlets, he was asked by jail staff like which car he was driving, and he allegedly said the one that won, the Corvette. So maybe they do know a little bit more there. They're both facing charges of racing on a highway and excessive speeding. The comments on this one, I mean, echoed sort of like what John said. Like, luckily, no one was hurt. A lot of people were really excited for this sort of 85-year-old man. I'll show a picture of his mugshot. He's smiling. It doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like he's having too bad of a time. Allegedly, I'm guessing something like this. I mean, racing on a highway, excessive speeding. John, with an 85-year-old defendant, I'm saying you're giving him a ticket, maybe a community service or something. You're probably letting him off pretty light.
Yeah, you want to. On the one hand, I can understand why people celebrate the spirit of an 85-year-old who can still keep the car going in a straight line at that rate of speed. On the other hand, again, a little dangerous for those of us who are out there not driving 85. But there are plenty of places to do this kind of racing. I mean, and you have to wonder, is this something this guy's been doing for the last 60 plus years? And this is the first time he got caught.
Right. Yeah, no, that's interesting if there has been like a long pattern of behavior here. But people had a lot to say about this one. A. Will D said, this man has probably been driving longer than the cop that arrested him has been alive. From the looks of it, can confirm, seemed like a younger officer here, which, I gotta wonder like what, because you see this car, it's like a gray Nissan 350Z, and I think if you're the officer, you probably immediately have a picture in your head of who you think you're about to pull over, right? And then out
Not
is
him.
85-year-old William Bosworth smoking a cigarillo. I wonder if the officer had a reaction to that, because we don't get to see that part on body cam.
Well, it's like I said, the guy has an attitude. He's got some spirit, and in the appropriate place, I'd go pay to watch, guys in their 90s race each other at a racetrack. I mean, that
You
could
would? Come on now, John, really?
I mean,
In a safe, if it's safe, then yes, I want to check it out. As long as we're ensured that it's safe, then definitely.
Yeah,
I can see that at a
that.
county fair or something, right? Like a racing with like an 80 and up sort of age bracket. I don't know.
It's 80's the new 50, I guess, or 40 or 20 if you're driving that fast.
And I have caught some flack on here before for referring to some defendants as old, but I do think most people are on my side. That 85 does seem to be an age where you should know to maybe not drive so fast.
I think your motor skills deteriorate, but other than that, he's got an approach to life. So
yeah, a real joy to Vive. Every Second Matters said 85 years old. He's just a kid, which I love that. As I said, I have gotten some flack here on how I've referred to the age of some suspects. You Can't Be Doing This said he was great in Fast and the Furious 35, which, yeah, I like the idea of like an original character being stretched out to that long because who knows? They'll probably keep those things going forever. And I'm going to end this on a comment from Geeker who said Grandpa Theft Auto, which I liked. It was pretty clever. But that is going to do it for this week's comment section. I want to thank everybody who sent those in. You can do that over on our YouTube community page. Also, you can comment on every video, and it does read your comments. But that'll do it for this week. Until next time, don't do crime.
John, it has been a pleasure to have you on today.
Oh, likewise. Thanks for having me.
John, can people follow you? Are you on social media?
I just my web page, but I do a lot of these things, various platforms. It's I enjoy it. It's good. It's a service, and it's good to meet you guys. I'm glad we could connect. Really
yeah. It's a total pleasure. We're so glad. I hope that you do come back. I know you're busy. You work as a criminal defense attorney. And what is your website, just for people who want to follow you?
It's johndaylaw.com. So JOHNDAYLAW.com.
How clever is that?
Short and sweet.
You can find me at Anna G News on all social media. Remember, everything that we do here at True Crime News is pretty easy to find. We have one handle, My True Crime News. Really simple. Of course, you can find this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. But if you want to watch and be part of the conversation and be part of our vibrant community on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have a newsletter available at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. And as we now say, crime never stops, and neither